Right now, you are thinking in words. Not images, not feelings, not raw sensation. Words, sentences. A voice in your head narrating your experience as it happens, including, right now, the experience of reading about itself. Here's what that means. You cannot fully imagine a world without language, because the moment you try, the moment you attempt to picture what existence would be like without words, you use words to do it. The tool you're trying to remove is the tool you're using to imagine its removal. That's not a paradox. That's a clue. Language didn't just give humans a way to communicate, it restructured the brain itself. It changed what we're capable of thinking, not just what we're capable of saying. Removing it doesn't just leave us quiet, it leaves us as a different species entirely. Here's what that species would look like. Most people think of language as a communication tool, a way to transmit information from one brain to another. And it is that, but that's the least interesting thing it does. Language is a cognitive technology. It doesn't just let you tell someone else what you're thinking, it changes what you're able to think in the first place. Here's the evidence. Researchers studying communities with limited number words, some languages have words only for one, two, and many, find that speakers of those languages struggle to distinguish between, say, 8 objects and 9 objects in ways that speakers of languages with full number systems do not. The concept isn't missing from their intelligence, the tool to hold it precisely in the mind is missing. Or consider color. Russian has separate basic words for light blue and dark blue, treating them as categorically different colors. Russian speakers are measurably faster at distinguishing shades that fall across their linguistic boundary than English speakers are. The eye sees the same light. The brain, shaped by language, processes it differently. Language doesn't just describe reality, it carves reality into the shapes your mind can handle. Without it, the world doesn't disappear. But the version of the world you can think about, precisely, abstractly, in categories you can hold and share, shrinks dramatically. Language didn't emerge in a brain that was already ready for it. It built the brain that could use it. We tend to assume the big human brain came first and language was just one of many things it learned to do. But the relationship runs in the other direction too. Language and the cognitive demands it places on the brain drove further brain development over tens of thousands of years. The regions of the human brain critical for language production and comprehension are significantly more developed in humans than in any other primate. But more importantly, the connections between these areas and the rest of the brain are denser, more complex, and more extensively integrated into other cognitive functions than in any species that doesn't use language. What this means? Language, in the human brain, doesn't stay in the language regions. It bleeds into memory, planning, emotional regulation, social cognition, and abstract reasoning. The brain didn't just add a language module, it reorganized itself around language over evolutionary time. A human brain without language exposure, not just a brain that never learned to speak, but a brain that evolved in a lineage that never developed language, would be structurally different, less connected, less capable of holding abstract concepts, running mental simulations, or planning beyond the immediate moment. It would be a capable brain, a smart brain even, but not a human brain as we know it. Here is the most underrated thing language gave us. Control over time. Not literally, but language gave humans the ability to mentally travel through time in a way no other animal can match. Animals live largely in the present. They can learn from the past, conditioning, memory, habit. They can anticipate the immediate future. But the kind of extended, detailed, hypothetical mental time travel that defines human cognition, sitting quietly and vividly simulating something that happened 3 years ago, or planning something that won't happen for 3 years from now, requires language. The reason is specific. To think about a detailed future scenario, you need to hold multiple hypothetical elements in your mind simultaneously and reason about their relationships. If I plant this seed now and it rains in the next month and I protect the area from animals, then in 3 months I will have food. That chain, conditional, future-oriented, multi-step, requires the grammatical structures that language provides. If, then, when, because, unless. These aren't just words, they're cognitive tools for chaining causes and effects across time. Without language, planning beyond the immediate moment becomes nearly impossible. Without language, there is no agriculture, because agriculture is, at its core, a multi-year plan. So what does the world actually look like if language never develops? First, and this is crucial, it's not silent. Other forms of communication exist: gesture, expression, vocalization, touch. Communication without language is not nothing. But here's what's missing: no cumulative culture. Culture accumulates where knowledge can be transmitted precisely between individuals and across generations. Without language, you cannot explain why a tool works, what modifications might improve it, or what you learned the last 10 times you tried. Each generation rediscovers what the previous one knew, rather than building on it. No agriculture. Multi-year planning, understanding of seasons in abstract terms, coordinating labor toward a deferred goal. None of that is accessible without language. No cities. Cities exist because humans can cooperate with strangers, people they've never met, who they need to trust anyway. That requires shared abstract concepts, laws, currency, ownership, obligation. These are all linguistic constructions. Without language, the maximum stable human group size is probably somewhere between 50 and 150 individuals who know each other personally. No writing, no mathematics, no science, no recorded history, no philosophy. The world has creatures in it that are intelligent, social, tool-using, and emotionally complex. They are not small, they are not simple, but they are capped. The ceiling of what any individual can think and what any group can build together is dramatically lower. But here's the part of this thought experiment that almost no one gets to. If language never developed, evolution doesn't stop. The pressures that drove human intelligence don't disappear. The advantages of being smarter, more coordinated, more adaptable don't go away. Something else would have developed instead. We don't know what. That's the honest answer. But we can reason about it. Some researchers studying animal cognition believe that certain species, dolphins, elephants, some corvids, are currently on evolutionary trajectories toward more complex communication systems. Without human dominance of the ecological niche, some of these lineages might have more room to develop. Or, more interestingly, the hominins that never developed language might have gone further down a different cognitive path entirely. There is evidence that non-linguistic intelligence, spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, social reading of other minds is in some ways sharper in species that rely on it more heavily. A world without human language might be a world with a different kind of intelligence, not lesser, not greater, organized around different principles. We can't fully imagine what that would look like because, as we said at the start, we can only think about it in words. There's one more thing language gave us that rarely makes it into these conversations. The self. Not consciousness. Animals have consciousness. Not awareness. Animals are aware. But the specific, narrative self that humans experience, the sense of being a continuous person with a past you remember, a present you're experiencing, and a future you're planning toward. That self is, in large part, a linguistic construction. Psychologists call it the narrative self, the version of you that exists as a story, a coherent, ongoing account of who you are, where you came from, what you value, what you're working toward. That story is told in language. It is language. Without it, there is experience, rich, complex, moment-to-moment experience. But there is no narrator. There is no you in the way you currently experience being you. Which means the question, what would I be like without language, is, in the deepest sense, unanswerable. Because the I doing the asking is a product of language. Remove language, and the entity that remains would not experience its own absence as a loss. It would simply experience, fully, directly, without the filter of words. Maybe that's not worse. Maybe, in some ways, it's more. But it wouldn't be you. You started this video thinking in words. You'll finish it the same way. You have no other option. That's not a limitation. It's the most profound inheritance your species has ever passed down. an invisible technology so deeply integrated into your cognition that you cannot step outside it to see its edges. Language didn't just let humans talk to each other, it let humans think thoughts that couldn't exist without it. It built a self that could wonder about its own origins. It created the conditions for every idea, every discovery, every story, every question ever asked, including this one. The world without language would have intelligence in it, richness and depth and connection. It might even have beauty that we, trapped inside our words, can no longer access. But it would not have the question, what if? And without that question, without the ability to imagine a world different from the one you're in, there is no science, no philosophy, no progress, no this. Just now. Just this moment. Over and over. Which, when you think about it, really think about it, might be exactly what we lost when we learned to speak.